Welcome back to two new creepypastas. I hope you enjoy it. The Forgotten Playroom. It started with an old key. I found it in a dusty, forgotten drawer of my grandmother's antique desk, an artifact from a bygone era that had stood in the corner of our attic for as long as I could remember. The key was small and intricately designed, its brass surface tarnished with age. For some reason, it fascinated me. That summer, my parents sent me to stay with my grandmother while they took a much-needed vacation. My grandmother's house was a sprawling Victorian mansion filled with winding corridors, hidden nooks, and mysterious rooms. The attic was my favorite place, a treasure trove of old books, discarded toys, and family heirlooms. The key had a tag attached to it, yellowed and brittle with age. Scrawled in an elegant, old-fashioned script were the words, "The Forgotten Playroom." Curiosity got the better of me. I had never heard of a playroom in the house before, and I knew every inch of it, or so I thought. I decided to find the door that matched the key. I started my search in the attic, the most logical place for a forgotten room. Hours passed as I combed through the maze of furniture and dusty boxes. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed something odd, a section of the wall that sounded hollow when I knocked on it. I ran my fingers along the wall, feeling for any irregularities. There, hidden behind a stack of old paintings, was a small, nearly invisible door. My heart raced with excitement and a hint of trepidation as I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click, and the door creaked open. The playroom was a time capsule from the past. It was filled with toys and furniture that looked as if they had not been touched in decades. A layer of dust covered everything, yet there was something strangely pristine about the room, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. The room was dimly lit by a single, small window covered in grime. Sunlight filtered through, casting an eerie glow over the room. I explored cautiously, noting the antique dolls, rocking horses, and miniature furniture. Everything looked handmade, crafted with meticulous care. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate dollhouse. It was a perfect replica of the very house I was in, down to the smallest detail. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, and I couldn't help but admire it. The dollhouse was fully furnished, with tiny figures positioned in various rooms, frozen in their activities. One figure caught my eye, a little girl, her porcelain face painted with a serene smile. She stood in a room that mirrored the very playroom I was in, staring out of a miniature window. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized the doll was looking directly at me. As I examined the dollhouse, I noticed something strange. The tiny figures were not static. They moved. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but no, they were definitely moving. The little girl had turned her head slightly, her eyes now following me. Panic welled up inside me. I backed away from the dollhouse, stumbling over an old toy chest. The lid flew open, revealing a collection of marionettes, their painted eyes staring lifelessly. I looked back at the dollhouse. The figures were now moving more noticeably, as if performing a macabre dance. A cold breeze swept through the room, carrying with it a whisper, soft and childlike. "Come play with us." The words sent chills down my spine. The dolls in the dollhouse were now moving towards the miniature door, the same door I had just unlocked in the attic. The little girl's voice echoed again, this time more insistent. "Come play with us forever." I turned to run, but the door I had entered through was no longer there. The room seemed to stretch and warp, the walls closing in on me. The whispering grew louder, now a chorus of children's voices, all chanting, "Come play with us." Desperation took hold. I grabbed the key, hoping it would somehow open another way out. As I turned back towards the dollhouse, I saw the little girl standing in front of it, her eyes now cold and malevolent. She held out her hand, beckoning me. "Come play with us," she whispered. Darkness enveloped the room, and the air grew thick with a sense of dread. The figures in the dollhouse were no longer confined to their miniature world. They were emerging, stepping into the playroom with me. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like marionettes controlled by invisible strings. I backed into a corner, clutching the key, my only link to the outside world. The little girl approached, her porcelain face cracking into a sinister grin. She reached out, her cold fingers brushing against my arm. In that moment, I knew the truth. The playroom was a trap, a place where the forgotten souls of children were imprisoned, their spirits bound to the toys that once brought them joy. The key had not unlocked a door to a hidden room, but to a realm of eternal play where time stood still and the innocent became the haunted. With a final, desperate cry, I thrust the key towards the little girl. A blinding light erupted, and the playroom dissolved into nothingness. I woke up in the attic, the key clutched tightly in my hand. The hidden door was gone, as if it had never existed. I never spoke of the playroom again, but I could still hear the whispers in the dark corners of my mind, calling me back to play. And I knew, deep down, that the forgotten playroom was still there, waiting for its next visitor, its next prisoner. Waiting for you. The silent scream. Every night, Emily heard the scream. It always started softly, like a distant wail carried on the wind, but it grew louder and more desperate as the minutes ticked by. She had moved into the old Victorian house a month ago, unaware of its dark history. The neighbors had been tight-lipped, merely offering polite smiles and nods. But one elderly woman had whispered a warning, "Be careful after dark." Emily thought it was superstition, until the screams began. Determined to uncover the source, she explored the house meticulously. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until she discovered the basement. The door was hidden behind a large bookcase, its hinges rusted and wood splintered. Descending the creaking stairs, Emily was enveloped in darkness. She fumbled for a light switch but found none. Her flashlight beam revealed old furniture, covered in dusty sheets and cobwebs that hung like curtains. Then she saw it, a small, dirt-encrusted door at the far end of the basement. The screams were louder here, almost unbearable. With trembling hands, she pried the door open. Inside was a cramped room, empty except for an old, full-length mirror, its surface marred by scratches. Emily approached it cautiously. As she looked into the mirror, she didn't see her reflection. Instead, she saw a young woman, her face contorted in terror, screaming silently. The woman's eyes locked onto Emily's, pleading. In that moment, Emily understood this was no ordinary mirror. It was a prison, holding the tormented soul of someone who had met a tragic end within these walls. Emily tried to step back, but her feet wouldn't move. She felt a cold grip around her ankles, pulling her closer to the mirror. Panic surged through her as she struggled, but the force was too strong. The last thing she saw was the woman's agonized face merging with her own reflection. When the new owners moved in a few months later, they found the house charming, albeit a bit eerie. The neighbors only smiled politely, offering no warnings. But as they settled in, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. And every night, they heard the distant, desperate scream of a young woman pleading for release from her mirrored prison. Thank you for watching. Have a good night of sleep and stay safe. Please consider subscribing. It is completely free.